Hey guys, here is the gear. Grand Havana from Mickey Lee Soapworks. We're going to use a Nacet blade. We're going to put it in the Stirling regular head, regular base plate stainless razor. And this is a Maggard SHD knot. Came out a few years ago, and it's, I don't know, I haven't heard it quite mentioned as much as it was when it first came out, but honestly, it's really a nice knot. Well, if you're thinking about a high density knot, if you're thinking about declaration or some of those other custom kind of hand tied knots, but it's a little too pricey for you, I think it's a well constructed knot that is a nice low price point compared to those others, but it gives you really close to that same experience. And we're going to put the Nacet in the razor today. We used the spoiler in this razor recently. I'm looking at maybe a 2-day growth here. And this handle is the Austin handle. And yeah, it's opposite where I normally grip my razors. I like to grip them up near the center of gravity. That way it kind of floats. You have ballast and balance, and so the razor head can kind of float over my skin. But because of the knurling here, I have great grip, and it's just something different, you know. And so I'm careful with my movement across my face with this one, because it doesn't offer that same kind of shock absorbing ability as my normal grip. But the other handles that came with the Stirling had a really small amount of knurling that was up here. Do I have that nearby? I got it somewhere. Oh well, it kind of looked like this. Here's the Austin, and then the one I used recently was the Dallas, and this little amount of knurling that was higher, you see, up on the handle, but it was a small amount. It was enough for kind of 1 finger width only, and I didn't really like the fact that that just didn't give me as much feel of control as enough secure grip is really what I was hoping for, because this little skinny part right here, it makes it look like a hammer, doesn't it? You know, it looks very strange to me, but they did discontinue this razor, or maybe it was just a limited run from the beginning. I mean, maybe if it took off like gangbusters, then maybe they would have done another batch, right? But I haven't heard that they are. And Mickey Lee is a discontinued soap, and I've recently taken up this year cigars, and just now recently pipes, just to try those out as well, because that's kind of a low-cost entry point there. And it's going pretty well. I need to get more practiced with the pipe. It requires a little bit more skill than the cigar. And so we'll see if the Havana, having just gone out and smoked a pipe and a cigar, some of the tobacco type notes aren't as strong, and I'm picking up some more of the bright, fresh kind of notes that are a part of this. You can see it hadn't been used in a while. You've got kind of shaking around in there. That's all right. It should still load up just fine. Let me get my face wet. The brush has been soaking, so he's all good. So we're going to shake most of the water out, leave it lightly wet, as I like to call it. And 30 seconds sounds good. We'll start at 25. Now, I haven't used this brush yet. I'm going to watch as I move it here how much movement the soap puck makes, because it is rotating around in there. And if I do the normal brush rotation, I'll have to see if it, have to make sure. Okay, that's 20 seconds. So yeah, going to 55. Yeah, that should still give us plenty of lather. I think that'll give us enough soap to do the job. when a puck moves around on you, then that means that you're not getting the brush moving across the surface of the puck as much. And so then you might need to lengthen your load time. Sometimes if it's a flexible container, I'll squeeze the container and then that will keep the soap from moving, but this is not one of those. You can also make a few shavings off the top and then press them down into the outside gap. That'll usually lock it down pretty nicely. You can also just kind of rehydrate it a little bit through even just normal use, and that will kind of, the puck in there will expand out to where it used to be, because that's what has happened after all. When the pucks shrink inside of where they were poured, you know, they were perfectly matched to this size, right? And they just lost water. So through use, as you can see, we've left a little bit of water moisture in, and so gradually that puck will expand and take back up the space it once had. It's a nice scent, yeah. All right, so let us start working this up. This is one of those cheap handles from like DS Cosmetics or AliExpress. Shave Forge is an American company that has bought some of those handles, you know, from the Chinese maker, I'm sure, and so they're available from Shave Forge as well. We can always go back to the puck if it turns out that 30 seconds wasn't all that profitable, and it's kind of looking like that right now, so let's do that. And this is really more because of the puck and its rotation. And so that'll mess up your data a little bit if you kind of record your load times. Mickey Lee was not a top-notch base, but it was pretty good and very good, and the slickness is generous, and it just doesn't really give you a super creamy lather when you hydrate it as much as I prefer. And there are other companies that kind of do that. That used to be kind of the norm several years ago. The original Chiseled Face is kind of that way. But like Chiseled Face, Mickey Lee, what they do bring to the table is a nice array of scents. Now that company has, you know, shut down a couple years ago, but they do have several scents that are unique, creative, and very enjoyable. We added a little bit of water, and we can see it start to come up. You can look at it and you can tell it's not all that dense. Now it's okay in the beginning to not be dense, because after all you're mixing it, bringing in the water in, and it hasn't received a lot of work yet, you know. But as we have gotten more time and folks have come out with really creamy lathers that take creamy soaps, you know, that end up making creamy lathers that still take a lot of water, that's when bases like this kind of fall behind a little bit, and they do suffer when you compare them to the others. But by themselves, I mean, they're highly functional, very slick. The good ones are, you know, and so there's nothing wrong with them at all. And if they got great scents, you're just missing that extra kind of creamy texture that you're getting now with the other bases. You can hear, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but you can kind of hear that we're not dealing with a whole lot of quantity here. Can you hear that noise? It's more of a dry noise. And so I feel like I probably need to go back in and get a little bit more soap here. And what jumped into my head just now is I should probably have added another 10 seconds to the load time, even without the movable puck issue, because this is a puck that sat around for a long time. So sometimes you have to add more load time because of that. See, now that's a more wet sound that we're getting now. I added a little bit of water, and we have more soap that's been added. So sometimes when you're mixing lather, also when you're shaving, of course, sound can really come into play when you're shaving. Obviously, the sound of the razor cutting your stubble, it's easy to see how that is a helpful thing, something that you can pay attention to if you want to know how your shave is going, but also the way your brush sounds in the bowl. With this one especially, this 3D printed bowl, a little more audio than, and that's the one ding I have against it. It doesn't sound as nice as a ceramic bowl might. And there we go. Now we kind of looking like what I want to see in terms of quantity, in terms of the sound of the lather. It sounds more creamy and less dry than it was before. And with these kinds of kind of old school bases, I might be tempted with some soaps. What you do is you keep on adding a little bit more water, and that emulsion kind of comes together better. But with these kind, a lot of times that just thins it down a little bit too much. And so often the case is that you need to run it a little bit drier than you might normally with some other soaps. I'm enjoying the flex of this brush as I'm mixing up here. I can feel that it's going to give me nice easy splay, and I know it's going to give me soft tips. Haven't used this brush yet. The one you have historically, I have used before. This is probably my first Maggard's SHD brush. The only thing is I don't like this handle. At first I thought I would because it's long and it's, you know, kind of bulbous. But you see, when you grip it, you can almost see the space that's under my finger pad. And so what does that do? That puts all the pressure on your fingertips when you're gripping it. And that's not comfortable. Now, of course, if you switch your grip to more of a side grip like this, it's terrific, but that's not usually how I work. It doesn't offer as much. You have to really hold on to it tightly to make that work. All right, splash a little bit more water on my face. And now let's see how this knot feels. This is a 24 millimeter. You can see that it's got plenty of splay to it. So it is kind of acting more like a larger knot. It's got some density, of course it should, right? It's a super high density knot. We're getting a little bit of lather loss here, and that's one of the issues sometimes with these older bases. I probably should have loaded even a little bit more than I did. And what I can do, if I see this being a little too wet, just kind of go back for just a few seconds. I've learned that when you go back and add a little soap to your, see, look, I think maybe I didn't press the brush down as much into the bowl as I was working it, and so I ended up with some extra water in my brush. So let's compensate by adding a little bit more soap to the mix. Seems like that water has kind of thinned down my lather too much. Yeah, that's coming back up nicely. These tips aren't super soft, but they're pretty soft. They're not overly gelled. They've been treated some. But that's the way it is with declaration as well. It just depends on what batch you get as to whether the tips have been treated a lot and so they're super jelly, or whether it's been the treatment's been backed off a little bit so that maybe you get a little bit more natural feel, a little bit more tip feel. Because these are two-band Badger brushes that they're doing these treatments on. And the reason that knot is being used, as opposed to something you might think, the silver tips, well, you want soft tips, you know, go for the silver tip. Well, silver tip may have those magically soft tips, but it doesn't have the backbone that is currently kind of in vogue with these two-band brushes. Just have that backbone, and you've got 3 bands. Now this is not a silver tip, but it's a 3-band. So you've got a thinner dark band right here than right here. These don't offer as much a backbone, and so to get the balance of the soft tips and the high backbone, then what the market has done is take these with the back, because the backbone you can't really change too much, but the tips you can with the treatments of bleach or whatever agents they use. All right, looking pretty good. Let's see how the Stirling stainless razor, this is not the high aggression head, it's the regular one, and with a Nacet in there with about 6 uses on it. And I definitely don't need to have my handle angle be that kind of typical 30 degrees. With this razor, it's on the aggressive side, and so I am naturally going to want to ride the cap in general. Put a little bit less pressure on the safety bar so that it lifts the edge of the blade up away from the skin a little bit. This kind of aggressive razor is easily capable of taking down multiple days of growth, but I probably would have appreciated a normal 1 day of growth when using this razor. But after the first pass, that'll all be done anyway. It'll be a moot point. All right, rinse. So last time I used the salve from Chatillon Luxe after the shave from this very razor, and it sure enough, in just several minutes, I wasn't feeling any of the irritation. Yeah, this is a good knot. If I was stuck somewhere and I just had to use this one, it would be enjoyable, and I wouldn't really miss, you know, a big selection of brushes. It's a good knot. And this may be my last pass with this razor. I think often the third pass is a mistake for me, because this cuts very closely because of its aggression. And that extra blade feel becomes a negative when I'm in the third pass and there's no stubble to keep my skin safe from the blade. Light touch, very light touch here. This is my trouble zone. Continuing to ride the cap. I don't usually like doing that. And there we go. But since this is a limited edition razor, if he may never do another run of these, and I'm a big fan of Stirling as a company, and I think this knurling here is just terrific, and he's kind of an oddball. I feel like I need to take him out and nail something to the wall, because this is a hammer. It's a little tiny tack hammer, you know. All right, getting a rinse here. Very comfortable right now. There's no issues with irritation, razor burn, or anything like that. So the scent, very enjoyable. A definite departure from the tobacco scents like Tobacconist from House of Mammoth and Full Measure of Man from Barrister and Man. This is on the other end of the spectrum, the kind of peppy green tobacco, as well as mixed in with other type notes. They just, yeah, they're ingredients around the rim here, not the scent notes. So I can't tell. There's probably some, maybe there's some citrus in there, as well as the kind of green tobacco. So very good outing here for the Maggard's super high density knot. 24 millimeter is plenty coverage for me. I don't need, this is a 26 or maybe a 28, and I definitely don't need it to be quite that big. And so yeah, I think I can put this one on the used market. This was an inexpensive, I got it at a great deal, I think, and it was a while back. It was my first time trying the Maggard's knot, and so I thought even if I didn't like the handle, it'd be a great way to try the knot. But I thought, hey, I might really like the handle, but this is actually the brush that made me learn that this little waist right here, this little narrow part of the brush is just too narrow for me to have a comfortable grip. And so this one, if I do end up liking this knot so much that I use it a lot, then I can cut this handle off of here and put it in a nicer handle if I feel like it. But this is a very practical handle. It's pretty ergonomic, so I don't need to move it if I don't want to. But the Maggard's knot is an UMO knot, O-U-M-O, and they have one called, I think it's called the Handmaster, and so that's what Maggard is using for their SHD. They do have some other knots that are kind of similar, but they all have their different attributes and stuff. But Maggard chose the, I think it's called the Handmaster, HT Handmaster, something like that is what is the one that Maggard is using. And very, very nice. I've got this Yaki knot right here. It's also, as you can see, it's a 2-band knot. I need to try it again sometime. I've used it once. I bought it mainly for the handle because I knew the handle would be ergonomic, and I was right. Matter of fact, this is a great candidate. If I want to move the Maggard knot into this one, that might be a really great way to combine the wonderful SHD knot with this great ergonomic handle and barber styling, of course, and get rid of this finest badger here. But I'm going to try it one more time before I pull it out or drill it out, whatever I have to do to get that knot out. All right, face feels pretty good, barely any. I do have a little tenderness, irritation that is slowly cropping up as minutes have passed, but it's super, super minimal, almost not worth noticing. I don't have to try to have a balm or any of that here after the shave. You know what? I have a really cool aftershave that was, and what's cool about it, it was a generous gift from Alex and one of my viewers, and so it's always wonderful to use stuff that reminds you of people's kindness and generosity. And this is kind of a traditional barber scent that you that it will be familiar to many of you guys, especially older guys. It reminds me of some old scent. This is Elite from Floris, and it's got skin food in there as well. It's not just scent. And there we go. I get to smell old school for the rest of the day. All right, so a good successful test with the Maggard brush there. And yeah, you know, that's funny. That might be very fortuitous that I would have this guy here as well, because that might be a great match, a great place to put that Maggard knot. All right, guys, this is has been a good shave. I am continuing to put hairdryer uses on my boar brushes. This is my Borathon chart here. They've all been used 27 times. Got about 13 or 12 brushes here. And after 27 uses, I'm blow drying them all 5 times. And that's my blow dryer treatment. I've documented that on my site. And we've got one that has 5, so he could be used. But I think what I'm going to do is wait. I'm going to wait till they all have been treated 5 times and then do a run of, make the 28th use of each of them all be kind of in sequence, so that I can kind of feel them all together at the same time and to see if they've changed. I'm sure they will, because I can just see the tips split. My owner's club has just never looked better here. And all the other brushes really are kind of in that same vein. So I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. Of course, the only concern is this little guy. His tips are splitting too, the Omega. The only concern I've got is it a destructive method? Is it causing the tips to split in a way that makes them break off? And so that is what I'm watching out for. All right, there we go. And then in terms of the hairdryer treatment, these guys are not in the Borathon, but I'm treating them separately. This guy has had maybe 30 treatments, and he looks just terrific. He keeps looking more cloudy and more cloudy as the tips keep splitting and getting more fine. And then the Omega is prickly, but we're just seeing, I'm going to hair dry him to death, and we'll just see what happens. He's kind of my throwaway Omega. And so we're seeing if this method can be aggressive enough to tame this rough beast and make a good brush out of it, because there are definitely fans out there of Omega brushes that claim that they're soft, and I just haven't experienced that. And so I'm wondering if it's simple a matter of age, number of uses, that kind of thing. It takes a while to get soft, but once it does, maybe it's a great kind of soft. And so that's what I'm trying to achieve. The water used today was about 20 milliliters, and the loading, as you saw, probably added up to about a minute or something like that. We'll keep that kind of a flexible number there. This is not going to be a great recipe shave for you guys to follow in a sense. Oh yeah, that scent is coming around, and it does just happen to match pretty nicely with the Grand Havana soap there. There's some definite common notes in there. Well, I think we're good. I can't think of anything else. I think this blade worked really well with the Stirling razor. It probably would give me a little bit of razor burn if I were to use it for a 3rd pass. I do like 3 passes because I just enjoy the brush and the lather and all that. And so 3 is better than 2. You know, it's like 3 treatments, 3 spa treatments are better than 2 spa treatments, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. And so I don't think this razor would be one that I would use a lot because of that. However, why not we keep, it's a limited run, it's a special company that does a lot for our community, and their soaps are just legendary for their value and still top performance. So the Nacet looks like a good blade for this razor. You know, there's a company called Stork that makes razor handles, and I don't know, this seems like it should be made by them, right? Long, skinny neck. All right, so I'm going to take the blade out, let it sit, let everything dry, all that. All right, guys, you take care. I sure hope there's been something in this shave to help you out along in your shaving journey. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Take care. Good night.